Hello, fellow night owl. Before we begin our journey back in time, I want to take a moment to greet you, wherever and whenever you may be, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening where you are. I'm glad you've chosen to join us here for tonight's gentle travel through the eras of our ancestors. If you don't mind, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know. It's always fascinating to see the diverse range of places and time zones represented by this wonderful community of history enthusiasts and curious minds. If you enjoy this kind of calm, immersive storytelling that blends education and relaxation, please consider subscribing so you don't miss future adventures through the annals of history. For now, get nice and comfortable, settle in, and let me gently transport you back to a very different time and place. Tonight, we'll be exploring what life was like for women in medieval Europe, a period spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century AD, an era of knights and castles, plagues and crusades, soaring cathedrals, and sprawling manors, a time of great change and upheaval, but also of entrenched traditions and social hierarchies. For the vast majority of women, daily life in the Middle Ages was a far cry from the romanticized images of chivalry, courtly love, and fairy tale princesses that tend to dominate our modern perceptions. You probably wouldn't last a day in their world, with its smoky huts, back-breaking labor, and the constant threat of fleas. So, before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum. And let's begin tonight's journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on more exciting adventures. Part 1. A World Lit Only. By fire, you open your eyes. The faint light of dawn, creeping through the cracks of a splintered wooden door. You're lying on a bed of dry straw, covered by a rough woolen blanket, inside a small thatched cottage in a European village in the 5th century. The air is so cold, it bites at your skin, seeping through the walls made of mud and straw, making you shiver uncontrollably. You sit up, your bare feet touching the hard, icy dirt floor, and it feels like you've just stepped into a modern freezer. Except there's no thermostat to turn up. The smell of wood smoke from a small hearth in the corner fills the air, making you cough as it stings your throat. Outside, a rooster crows, signaling the start of what you already know will be an endlessly long day. You wrap the blanket tighter around yourself, trying to hold on to the last bits of warmth. But the chill sneaks in like a thief, stealing every bit of heat from your body. You shuffle out of your sleeping corner, where your entire family, your parents and 3 siblings, are crammed into this one-room home. Privacy doesn't exist here. Everyone sleeps together on straw mats, separated only by thin, tattered curtains hung as makeshift dividers. Your mother, a woman with a weathered face and calloused hands, is already tending to the hearth, blowing on the embers to coax a flame to life. She's heating a pot of water, her movements quick and practiced. She glances at you, her voice hoarse. Up already, go fetch water from the well. Hurry now. You nod, though inwardly you're thinking, if this were a modern morning, you'd still be wrapped in your duvet for another hour, maybe with a steaming cup of coffee in hand. But no, here you're stuck with a heavy wooden bucket and a muddy path leading to the village well, where the water is so cold it might as well be ice. You slip on your worn leather shoes, so threadbare they barely keep the cold at bay, and step outside. The early morning sun casts a pale glow over the small village, where clusters of thatched cottages huddle together, their straw roofs yellowed and sagging. Not far off, a grey stone castle looms on a hilltop, its towers and battlements looking down like a stern overlord on the peasants below. Smoke from other hearths rises into the air, mingling with the earthy scent of animal dung from nearby barns. You wrinkle your nose, wondering how anyone could get used to this mix of smells. Maybe they've adapted. But to you, it's like a full-on assault on your senses. The kind of thing that makes you long for a modern air freshener, or at least a face mask. The path to the village well is slick with mud, each step squelching as the muck clings to your shoes, making your feet feel heavier with every move. You spot a few other women, heading the same way, their wooden buckets slung over their shoulders like badges of their daily burden. One of them, a young mother with a baby tied to her back with a strip of cloth, gives you a tired smile. Cold morning, isn't it? She says. Her voice, a mix of warmth and resignation. You nod, managing a small smile back. But inside you're thinking, cold is an understatement. And this bucket feels like it's holding an entire cow. If there were a modern faucet here, you'd probably throw a party to celebrate. At the well, you grab the rope and start pulling, each turn of the crank making your arms ache. The water is so cold that when it splashes onto your hands, it feels like tiny needles pricking your skin. You fill your bucket carefully, trying not to spill, though a few drops still hit your hands, sending a shiver up your spine. As you trudge back, the church bell in the distance tolls, signaling morning prayers. It's deep. Resonant sound mixes with the barking of dogs and the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer nearby, creating a chaotic symphony of medieval life. You mutter to yourself, if this is their version of a peaceful morning, you'd hate to see what a noisy day looks like. Back at the cottage, you set the bucket down with a heavy thud, your breath coming out in short gasps. Your mother has the fire going now, a small flame, flickering weakly, but enough to take the edge off the chill. She pours the water into a pot, starting to prepare a thin barley porridge. The only breakfast your family can afford today. Your father, a tall, gaunt farmer with a face etched with wrinkles, steps inside, holding a worn hoe. He looks at you, his voice low. You'll come to the fields with me today. But first, help your mother. You nod, though all you want is to sit down and rest for a moment. Rest. Though that's a luxury you can't even dream of here. You start helping your mother, stirring the barley porridge over the fire, the heat warming your face, but also making your eyes sting from the smoke. The barley is coarse. Nothing like the cereals you're used to in the 21st century. It's chewy and bland, but it's what keeps your family alive through the long winter. You glance around the cottage, noticing how sparse it is. Just a rickety wooden table, a few clay bowls, and an old loom your mother uses to weave cloth. There's no electricity, no running water, and definitely no Wi-Fi. You smirk to yourself, thinking, if you could bring a space heater from the modern world here, the whole village might crown you their queen. As you stir the porridge, your mother talks about life here. She says, in the Middle Ages, women have few choices. They're born to work, marry, bear children, and pray for a life that isn't too harsh. A stark historical truth is that, in the 5th century, most women have no right to own property. Everything belongs to their fathers or husbands. A peculiar detail is that people believe hot baths allow illness to enter through the pores, so your family only bathes a few times a year, usually in summer, in a nearby river where the water is so cold, it makes your skin prickle, just thinking about it. Historians still debate whether this hygiene belief truly accelerated the spread of diseases, but it certainly makes life here, well, a bit pungent, to say the least. You ladle the porridge into bowls, and your family gathers around the table. Your father says a brief prayer, thanking God for this meager meal. You take a spoonful, wincing at the bland taste. But your growling stomach doesn't give you much choice. Outside, the sun climbs higher, signaling a long day ahead. You glance out the window, seeing other women in the village starting their work, their shoulders bent under the weight of their tasks, both literal and figurative. You wonder if you'll survive a day like this, or if you'll throw in the towel before noon even hits. But the day has only just begun, and there's no time to dwell on your exhaustion. Your mother hands you a broom made of twigs. "Sweep the floor while I finish here," she says. You take the broom, its rough handle scratching your palms, and start sweeping the packed dirt floor, the kicking up dust that makes you sneeze. It's a futile task. Really, the dirt just gets pushed around, but you do it anyway, knowing every chore matters in this endless fight for survival. Your younger sister, a girl of about 6, with tangled hair and a smudged face, watches you work, clutching a small wooden doll her father carved for her last winter. She's quiet, her big eyes following your every move, already learning the rhythm of a woman's life here. You finish sweeping and step outside to empty the dust, the cold air hitting you like a slap. The village is fully awake now, the sounds of daily life growing louder. A group of men head toward the fields, their tools slung over their shoulders, while women carry baskets of laundry to the river or tend to squawking chickens. You spot a neighbor, an older woman with a hunched back, feeding her pigs. Her movements slow but steady. She catches your eye and nods, a silent acknowledgement of the shared struggle. You nod back, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie, even though you've only been here a few hours. Back inside, your mother is rolling out dough for flatbread, her hands dusted with flour. She motions for you to help, and you join her, kneading the dough with your hands. It's tough work, the dough resistant under your fingers, and soon your arms are aching again. You can't help but think of how easy this would be with a modern mixer, or even just a decent rolling pin. Your mother notices your struggle and chuckles softly. "You'll get used to it," she says, though her tone suggests she knows you might not have to. Not really. You smile weakly, hoping she's right, but doubting it all the same. As you work, your father returns briefly to grab a sack of seeds for planting. He pauses to watch you, then says, "We'll need more firewood soon. The stack's getting low." You nod, adding another task to your mental list. Firewood means trekking to the edge of the forest, gathering fallen branches, and hauling them back. Another job that'll leave your hands scratched and your back sore. You sigh inwardly, wondering how medieval women manage to do this every day without breaking down. Maybe they don't have a choice. You think, and that thought makes your chest tighten. The morning stretches on, each task blending into the next. You help your mother finish the bread, then carry a basket of eggs from the chickens to a neighbor in exchange for a small bundle of herbs. The neighbor, a stout woman with a sharp tongue, complains about the weather, saying it's too cold for her joints. You nod sympathetically, though you're more focused on the tiny flea you just spotted hopping on your sleeve. You flick it away, shuddering, and make a mental note to check for more later. Personal hygiene. Here is a battle you're not sure you can win. By the time the sun is fully up, you're already exhausted. Your hands raw from work, your body aching in places you didn't know could ache. You sit down for a moment, sipping a cup of weak herbal tea your mother brewed with the herbs you traded for. It's bitter, but warm, and you savor the brief respite. Outside, the village hums with activity, at a constant reminder that there's no rest for the weary. You look at your mother, her face lined with years of toil. and wonder how she's done this her whole life. She catches your gaze and gives you a small, knowing smile, as if to say, "This is just the beginning." Part 2. A fragile childhood. You're still sitting by the hearth, the bitter taste of herbal tea lingering on your tongue. When your mother nudges you gently, the warmth from the fire has barely seeped into your bones. But there's no time to linger. She hands you a small wooden bucket, her voice firm, but not unkind. "Go feed the chickens. Then help your sister with the spinning." You nod, standing up slowly, your body already protesting from the morning's chores. The rough wool of your tunic scratches against your skin as you move, a constant reminder of how far you are from the soft cotton pajamas you'd be wearing in your modern life. You glance at your younger sister, who's sitting cross-legged on the dirt floor, clutching her wooden doll while watching your mother knead dough. She's only 6, but her small hands are already learning the tasks that will define her life. Just as they're starting to define yours, you step outside, the cold air hitting you like a wave, and head to the small coop where a handful of scrawny chickens cluck impatiently. The wooden bucket in your hand is filled with leftover barley scraps, the same grain you ate for breakfast, though these bits are even more coarse, speckled with dirt and husks. You scatter the feed on the ground, watching the chickens peck at it with a ferocity that makes you chuckle softly. If only you could muster that much enthusiasm for your own meals here, you think. But then again, you're not fighting for survival the way these birds are. Or maybe you are. In a way, just on a slower, more grueling scale. You shake off the thought, your breath visible in the chilly air, and head back inside, your shoes caked with more mud from the soggy ground. Your sister looks up as you enter, her big eyes following you as you set the bucket down. She's already pulled out a small spindle and a pile of raw wool, her tiny fingers fumbling with the fibers as she tries to twist them into thread. You kneel beside her, the dirt floor hard against your knees, and take the spindle from her hands to show her how to spin it properly. The wool is greasy, smelling faintly of sheep and earth, and it sticks to your fingers as you work. "Like this," you say, guiding her hands. Though you're hardly an expert yourself, you've only been here a day. But already, you're expected to know the basics of a medieval girl's life. The skills that girls like your sister have been learning since they could walk. She nods, mimicking your movements, her tongue poking out in concentration. You can't help but smile, though there's a pang in your chest as you realize how quickly her childhood is slipping away. This is the reality for girls in medieval Europe. Their childhood a brief and fragile stage, more a preparation for adulthood than a time of play. A stark historical truth hits you as you watch your sister struggle with the spindle. In the 5th century, infant mortality rates are heartbreakingly high, with estimates suggesting that 30 to 50% of children don't survive past their 5th birthday. Disease, malnutrition, and accidents claim countless young lives, and girls are especially vulnerable. A peculiar detail you recall is that many parents don't even name their children until they're a year old, fearing they won't survive long enough to need a name. A practice that feels both practical and heartbreakingly cold. Historians still debate whether this high mortality rate was due more to poor sanitation or the lack of medical knowledge. But either way, it means that every day your sister survives is a small miracle. You help her spin for a while, the rhythmic motion of the spindle almost soothing. Though your arms ache from the unfamiliar task, your mother glances over, nodding in approval. "Good. You're learning fast," she says. But her tone carries the weight of expectation. You're not just helping your sister, you're being trained, too. For a life that revolves around domestic duties, there's no room for play here. No dolls to dress up or games to play. At least not in the way you'd think of childhood in the modern world. Your sister's wooden doll, the one she clutches so tightly, isn't a toy for make-believe. It's a tool to practice, caring for a baby. Something she'll likely be doing for real in less than a decade. You shudder at the thought, imagining her as a child bride. Her small frame bent under the weight of her husband's demands and a newborn's cries. Your mother calls you over to help with the next task, grinding barley for the evening meal. She hands you a small stone quern, a heavy, flat stone with a rough surface, and a pile of barley grains. You sit on the floor, the quern between your knees, and start grinding, pushing the top stone back and forth over the grains. It's back-breaking work, your shoulders burning after just a few minutes, and the barley grinds slowly, turning into a coarse flour that sticks to your sweaty palms. Your mother works beside you, her movements swift and efficient, the years of practice making her hands move like a machine. You'll get faster, she says, noticing your struggle. Every girl does. You force a smile, but inside you're thinking, if this is what it takes to make bread here, you'd happily trade your entire medieval existence for a single loaf from a modern bakery. As you grind, your mother begins to tell you stories. Her voice, soft but steady, the kind of tone that lulls you despite the ache in your arms. She speaks of the Virgin Mary, a figure every girl in the village is taught to revere, the ideal of feminine virtue, who bore the Saviour with perfect obedience. These biblical tales aren't just stories here. They're lessons, meant to instill in you the virtues of modesty, submission, and piety. You're expected to emulate Mary, to be quiet, obedient, and devoted to your family and God. It's a heavy burden for a girl, one that feels even heavier as you glance at your sister, who's now humming softly as she spins wool, already absorbing these ideals, without question. You wonder if she'll ever have the chance to dream of something more, or if her life will be as narrow as the path you're being forced to walk. The grinding goes on for what feels like hours. Though the sun outside tells you it's barely mid-morning, your hands are blistered by the time you've produced enough flour for a small loaf, and you flex your fingers, wincing at the soreness. Your mother takes the flour, mixing it with water to form a dough, her hands moving with a grace you can't help but admire. You'll do this every day soon, she says, not unkindly. It's a woman's work. You nod, though the thought of doing this daily makes you want to cry. You're starting to understand why childhood here is so fleeting. The girls are pushed into adult roles as soon as they can handle them, their youth sacrificed to the endless demands of survival. Your father returns from the fields for a brief break, his face streaked with sweat despite the cold. He sits heavily at the table, taking a bowl of leftover porridge from breakfast. The Lord's men came by, he says, his voice low. They're demanding extra grain this month for the castle stores. Your mother sighs, her shoulders slumping. We barely have enough for ourselves. You listen quietly, the weight of their words sinking in. The lord of the manor, who lives in that grey castle on the hill, owns the land your family works, and his demands can mean the difference between a full belly and starvation. You realize that even your childhood labor, grinding barley, spinning wool, feeding chickens, is part of this larger struggle, a fight to keep your family afloat under the Lord's heavy hand. Your father finishes his meal and stands. I'll need you in the fields this afternoon, he says to you. We're planting the last of the seeds. You nod, though the thought of more work makes your body ache preemptively. You're already exhausted, and the day isn't even half over. You glance at your sister again, who's now helping your mother knead the dough, her small hands mimicking your mother's movements. You wonder how long she'll stay a child, how many years she has before she's married off. her life consumed by the same endless cycle of labor and duty. For most girls here, that day comes far too soon, often by the age of 12 or 13, their childhood ending with a betrothal they have no say in. Before you head to the fields, your mother sends you to the river to rinse the family's laundry. A task that sounds simple but quickly proves otherwise. You gather a basket of soiled tunics and linens, the fabric stiff with dirt and sweat, and trudge to the nearby stream. The water is freezing, your hands turning red as you scrub the clothes against a flat rock. Using a harsh lye soap that burns your skin, you work quickly, trying to ignore the cold seeping into your bones. But it's impossible to escape the discomfort. A few other girls from the village are there too. Their chatter a mix of complaints and laughter, a small moment of camaraderie in an otherwise grueling day. One of them, a girl about your age, with freckles across her nose, jokes. At least the river doesn't care if we're late. Unlike our fathers. You laugh, the sound surprising you. And for a moment, the cold doesn't feel so bad. You finish the laundry, your hands raw and stinging, and haul the heavy, wet basket back home. The sun is higher now, its weak warmth doing little to dry the clothes as you hang them on a line outside the cottage. Your mother inspects your work, nodding in approval. Not bad for your first time, she says, but you'll need to be faster tomorrow. You manage a weak smile, though inside you're thinking, tomorrow you're not sure you'll survive today. Your father calls you to the fields, and you grab a small sack of seeds, your body already bracing for the next round of labor. As you walk behind him, the village fading into the distance, you can't help but feel the weight of this life pressing down on you. A life where childhood is nothing more than a brief, fragile prelude to a woman's endless toil. Part 3. The pressure of early marriage. You trudge back from the fields, your hands blistered from planting seeds under your father's watchful eye. The late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the muddy path. Your tunic is damp with sweat, clinging to your skin, and every step feels heavier than the last. The village comes into view, its thatched cottages glowing faintly in the fading light. But there's no comfort in the sight. Your mother greets you at the door, her face tight, with something you can't quite read. She pulls you inside, her voice low and urgent. We need to talk. Now, you set down the empty seed sack, your stomach knotting with unease, the exhaustion of the day suddenly secondary to the tension in her tone. She gestures for you to sit by the hearth, where a small fire crackles weakly, its warmth barely reaching your chilled hands. Your mother sits across from you, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Your father and I have been speaking with the miller. She begins, her eyes avoiding yours. He has a son, Thomas, a boy of 16. They've agreed it's time for you to be betrothed. The words hit you like a stone, your breath catching in your throat. You're only 12, barely old enough to handle the daily chores of the cottage. And now they're talking about marriage. You stare at her, hoping this is some kind of medieval misunderstanding. But her expression tells you it's all too real. You'll meet him tomorrow, she continues, her voice softening slightly. It's a good match. Better than most girls your age get. You want to protest, to scream that you're not ready. But the words stick in your throat, trapped by the weight of expectation. In medieval Europe, this moment is all too common for girls like you. A historical truth you can't ignore is that the legal age for marriage is 12 for girls and 14 for boys, though betrothals often start even earlier, sometimes at birth, to secure alliances or economic stability. A peculiar detail you recall is that some noble families use wet nurses to delay a girl's puberty, believing it makes her more manageable for early marriage. a practice that sounds horrifyingly calculated to your modern ears. Historians still debate whether these early marriages were consummated immediately or delayed until the girl was older. But either way, the pressure to wed young shapes your life from the moment you're born. You manage to stammer out a question. But why now? Your mother sighs, her hands smoothing her apron. A nervous habit you've noticed before. We can't afford to keep you much longer, she admits, her voice heavy with guilt. The Miller's family has grain to spare, and Thomas will inherit his father's trade. You'll be fed, cared for, better than we can do here. You feel a pang of hurt at her words, though you know she's speaking the truth. Your family barely scrapes by. Every harvest, a gamble against starvation, and one less mouth to feed, could mean the difference between survival and ruin. Still, the thought of leaving your home, your siblings, the familiar smoky walls of this cottage, fills you with dread. You've never even met Thomas. And now, he's supposed to be your future. Your mother tries to comfort you, her hand resting on yours. It's the way of things, she says, her voice softer now. I was 13 when I married your father. You'll manage, just as I did. You nod, though inside, you're screaming. Managing isn't the same as living. You think back to your modern life, where 12-year-olds are still playing with friends, worrying about school projects. Not husbands. Here, you're being handed over like a sack of barley. Your worth measured by what you can bring to a marriage, not who you are. You try to imagine Thomas, picturing a kind face, but all you can conjure is a stranger's shadow looming over your future. That night, you lie on your straw mat, the snores of your siblings filling the cramped space. But sleep won't come. The fire has died down, leaving the cottage cold, and you pull your blanket tighter, your mind racing. You think about running away, but where would you go? The forest beyond the village is full of wolves, both the animal kind and the human kind, bandits who'd see a lone girl as easy prey. You're trapped, just as surely as if you were locked in a cell, your fate sealed by forces you can't control. You wonder if Thomas will be kind, if he'll let you visit your family, if he'll expect you to bear children right away. The thought makes your stomach churn, your body still that of a child, nowhere near ready for such a burden. Morning comes too soon. The roosters crow, pulling you from a restless doze. Your mother is already up, preparing a small bundle of your belongings, a spare tunic, a wooden comb, and a small clay charm your sister made for you last summer. She hands it to you, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For luck, she whispers, and you clutch the charm tightly, feeling its rough edges dig into your palm. You help her with the morning chores, feeding the chickens, sweeping the floor, but every movement feels mechanical, your mind numb with fear. Your father avoids your gaze, his silence louder than any words, and you realize he feels guilty too, but not enough to change his mind. The Miller's family arrives just before noon, their cart rattling into the village, drawn by a bony mule. Thomas steps down, a lanky boy with straw-colored hair and a face dotted with freckles. He looks as nervous as you feel, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his tunic. But that doesn't make you feel any better. His father, a stout man with a booming voice, claps your father on the shoulder. A fine match. Eh? He says, as if you're a prized cow at market. You force a smile, your heart pounding, as Thomas steps forward, offering you a shy nod. Hello, he mumbles, his voice cracking slightly, and you manage a quiet reply, your throat tight with panic. The adults lead you to the village church, a small stone building with a sagging roof. where the priest waits to bless the betrothal. The ceremony is brief. Just a few words spoken in Latin, the priest's voice droning as he sprinkles holy water over you and Thomas. You stand there, feeling the cold water drip down your forehead, your hand trembling in Thomas's clammy grip. The villagers gather outside, offering congratulations. But their smiles feel hollow, their eyes pitying. One old woman whispers to another, "She's young, but she'll grow into it." And you want to scream that you don't want to grow into anything. You just want to go home, but home isn't yours anymore. Not really. You belong to Thomas now. Or at least you will once the marriage is finalized in a few years. After the ceremony, the miller's family invites yours to their home for a modest feast. A rare treat of bread, cheese, and a small jug of ale. You sit beside Thomas, picking at your food, your appetite gone. He tries to make conversation, asking if you like to sing, but you can barely muster a response. Your mind too full of fear, you notice his hands, already calloused from working at the mill, and wonder if they'll be gentle or harsh. He seems kind enough, but you've heard stories of husbands who change after the wedding, their kindness replaced by cruelty. You force down a bite of bread, the crust scratching your throat, and try to focus on the chatter around you. The adults laughing over some village gossip. The feast ends as the sun dips below the horizon, and you're allowed to return home with your family for now. Since the marriage won't be official until you're older, you walk back in silence, the charm your sister gave you still clutched in your hand, its weight a small comfort. Your mother puts her arm around you. "You did well today," she says, but her voice wavers, betraying her own unease. You nod, unable to speak. The reality of your betrothal sinking in. You're no longer just a girl. You're a future wife. Your childhood cut short by the demands of survival and tradition. Back in the cottage, you help your mother clean up, washing the clay bowls in a basin of cold water, your hands stinging from the soap. Your sister watches you, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Was Thomas nice?" she asks. And you force a smile. "He seemed okay," you say, though you're not sure you believe it. You wonder if she'll face the same fate in a few years. Her own childhood, ending with a betrothal she can't refuse. The thought makes you want to protect her, to shield her from this life. But you know you're powerless to change her path, just as you're powerless to change your own. As you lie down on your straw mat that night, the fire's glow casting flickering shadows on the walls, you feel a strange mix of fear and resignation. You're betrothed now, your future tied to a boy you barely know, your life no longer your own. You clutch the clay charm, whispering a silent prayer for strength. Though you're not sure anyone is listening, the weight of your new reality presses down on you, heavier than any bucket of water you've carried. And you wonder how you'll survive the years ahead. A child bride, in a world that demands you grow up far too fast. Part 4. Childbirth and Peril. You wake to the familiar sound of the rooster crowing, the dim light of dawn seeping through the cracks in the cottage walls. It's been a few years since your betrothal to Thomas. And now, at 15, you're married, living in the miller's home on the edge of the village. The straw mat beneath you feels harder today. Could your body heavy in a way it never has before? You shift, feeling a strange tightness across your belly, a sensation that's been growing for months. You're pregnant, your first child due any day now, and the weight of that reality presses down on you as heavily as the coarse wool blanket draped over your swollen frame. You sit up slowly, your hands instinctively resting on your belly, feeling the faint kick of the life inside you. It's a moment that might be tender in another time, but here, it's laced with fear. the kind that knots your stomach and makes your breath catch. You swing your legs over the edge of the mat, your bare feet touching the cold dirt floor, and stand with effort, your back aching from the extra weight. Thomas is already up, tending to the mill's wheel outside, the rhythmic creak of its turning a constant backdrop to your days here. You pull on your tunic, the fabric stretched tight over your belly, and step into the main room of the small house. Your mother-in-law, a stout woman with greying hair and a sharp tongue, is stirring a pot of barley porridge over the hearth. She glances at you, her eyes narrowing. "You're moving slow today," she says, her tone more critical than concerned. You nod, biting back a retort, knowing she expects you to keep up with your chores, despite your condition. You think to yourself, if this were the modern world, you'd be on bed rest with a stack of parenting books and a cup of decaf tea, not hauling water while 9 months pregnant. You grab a wooden bucket to fetch water from the well, a task you've done countless times. But today, each step feels like wading through mud. The village is quiet this early, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. But you barely notice the golden leaves falling around you. Your mind is consumed with worry. The stories of childbirth you've heard whispering in your ears. In medieval Europe, pregnancy and childbirth are a woman's ultimate duty, but also her greatest peril. A historical truth you can't escape is that maternal mortality rates are staggeringly high, with estimates suggesting that up to 20% of women die during or shortly after childbirth due to complications like hemorrhage or infection. A peculiar detail you've learned from the village midwife is that some women chew on a piece of leather during labor to muffle their screams, a practice meant to keep evil spirits from being drawn to their pain. Though it sounds more like a desperate attempt at dignity to you, historians still debate whether the high death rates were more due to poor hygiene or the lack of medical knowledge. But either way, every birth here is a gamble with death. You reach the well, your breath coming in short gasps, and pull up a bucket of water, the cold liquid splashing onto your hands and making you wince. As you haul it back, a sharp pain slices across your lower belly, making you stop in your tracks. You drop the bucket, water spilling onto the ground, and clutch your stomach, doubling over as another contraction hits. Panic surges through you, your heart pounding, and you realize this is it. The baby is coming. You call out for help, your voice trembling, and a neighbor woman, older and hunched from years of toil, hurries over. "It's time, isn't it?" she says, her voice calm but firm. And you nod, unable to speak through the pain. She helps you back to the house, her arms strong around your shoulders, and calls for the midwife as you stumble through the door. Inside, your mother-in-law's face shifts from irritation to urgency. "Get her to the mat," she snaps, clearing a space by the hearth. You lie down, the straw beneath you, scratching through the thin blanket they spread out, your body trembling as another contraction grips you. The midwife, a wiry woman named Agnes with hands rough as tree bark, arrives quickly, her basket of herbs and tools slung over her shoulder. She kneels beside you, her eyes assessing. First one. "Hey," she says, her tone matter of fact. "It'll be a long day. But you're young. You'll manage." You nod, though her words do little to ease your fear. You've heard the stories of girls your age who didn't survive their first birth. Their bodies too small, too weak, torn apart by the ordeal. You think, if this were the 21st century, you'd be in a hospital with an epidural and a team of doctors, not on a straw mat with nothing but herbs and prayers. Agnes works quickly, mixing a poultice of pennyroyal and chamomile. The sharp, bitter scent filling the air as she rubs it onto your belly, muttering a prayer to Saint Margaret, the patron saint of childbirth. She hands you a small wooden cross to clutch. Hold this. It'll keep the devil away, she says, and you grip it tightly, the edges digging into your palm. Though you're not sure if you believe in its power, the contractions come faster now, each one a wave of pain that makes you gasp, your body tensing against your will. Your mother-in-law stands nearby, her arms crossed. Push when Agnes tells you, she says, her voice sharp. We need a boy to help at the mill. The pressure to produce a son weighs on you as heavily as the labor itself. Failure to do so could mean scorn, or worse, being cast aside for a more fertile wife. Hours pass, the pain relentless, your body slick with sweat, despite the chill in the air. Agnes coaches you through each contraction, her voice steady. Breathe. Girl, breathe, she says, her hands pressing against your belly to guide the baby. You try to focus on her words, but the pain is all-consuming, a fire that burns through every thought. You think of your mother, wondering how she survived this with you and your siblings, and wish she were here now, her gentle hands soothing you, but she's back at your old cottage, too far to reach, and you're alone with your fear, your body straining to bring this child into the world. The labor stretches into the evening, the light outside fading to a deep blue, the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls. You're exhausted, your voice hoarse from crying out. But Agnes doesn't let you give up. One more push, she urges, her hands ready to catch the baby. You can do it. You summon every ounce of strength left in you, your body shaking, and with a final, agonizing push, you feel a release, followed by the sharp cry of a newborn. Relief floods through you, tears streaming down your face as Agnes lifts the baby. A tiny, squirming girl, her cries echoing in the small room. A daughter, Agnes says, wrapping her in a scrap of cloth and handing her to you. You hold her close, her warmth against your chest, a small comfort. But your mother-in-law's face darkens. A girl, she mutters. We'll try for a boy next time. You barely hear her, your eyes fixed on your daughter, her tiny fingers curling around yours. She's perfect, her cries softening as she nestles against you. But the joy is overshadowed by exhaustion and fear. You know this is just the beginning, the first of many births, if you survive long enough. Each one a risk to your life. You think of the women who didn't make it, their graves marked by simple wooden crosses in the churchyard, and wonder if you'll join them one day. Agnes checks you for bleeding, her hands gentle now. You did well, she says. Rest now. You'll need your strength. You nod, too tired to speak, your body aching but alive. At least for now. Thomas returns as night falls, his face lighting up when he sees the baby. A girl, he says, his voice soft. She looks like you. You manage a weak smile, grateful for his kindness, though you know he must feel the same pressure for a son as his mother does. He sits beside you, his hand resting on yours, and for a moment, you feel a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe you can build a life together, despite the odds. But the reality of your situation looms large, your body already weakened, the spectre of future pregnancies hanging over you like a dark cloud. You drift into a fitful sleep, your daughter cradled in your arms, the fire's warmth lulling you despite the ache in your body. You dream of a different world, One where childbirth isn't a death sentence, where you could hold your baby without fear of what comes next. But here, in this medieval village, survival is all you can hope for yourself and for the tiny life you've brought into this harsh, unforgiving world. Part 5. Endless household toil. You wake to the soft whimpering of your newborn daughter, her tiny cries pulling you from a shallow sleep. It's been a few days since her birth, and your body still aches from the ordeal. Every movement, a reminder of the labor you endured. You're lying on the straw mat in the miller's home, the faint glow of dawn creeping through the small window, casting a pale light across the room. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and damp earth. The fire in the hearth reduced to glowing embers overnight. You shift carefully, wincing as your sore muscles protest, and pick up your daughter, cradling her against your chest. She quiets almost instantly, her small mouth searching for milk, and you let her nurse. The rhythmic pull, a strange mix of comfort and exhaustion. You're still weak, but there's no time to rest. Not in this medieval world where a woman's work never stops. Even after childbirth, your mother-in-law is already up, her heavy footsteps echoing as she moves around the room, stoking the fire and setting a pot of water to boil. She glances at you, her expression a mix of impatience and resignation. "You'll need to help today," she says, her voice clipped. "We can't afford to have you lying about." You nod, though inside you're screaming. You just gave birth a few days ago. Surely you deserve a break. But no. Here in 5th century Europe, there's no such thing as maternity leave. No cozy recovery period with Netflix and takeout. You're expected to get back to work as soon as you can stand. Your body pushed to its limits to keep the household running. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be sipping herbal tea in a hospital bed, not hauling yourself up to face a day of endless chores. You finish nursing your daughter, wrapping her in a scrap of cloth and laying her in a small wooden cradle Thomas carved last month. She fusses for a moment, but settles, her tiny fists unclenching as she drifts back to sleep. You stand slowly, your legs shaky, and pull on your tunic, the fabric still stretched from your pregnancy, now hanging loose around your waist. Your mother-in-law hands you a broom made of twigs. "Start with the floor," she says. "Then we'll need water for washing." You take the broom, its rough handle scraping your blistered hands, and begin sweeping the packed dirt floor, the dust rising in clouds that make you cough. It's a futile task. The dirt just shifts around, but you do it anyway, knowing every chore matters in this relentless fight for survival. In medieval Europe, a woman's life is defined by an unending cycle of domestic labor, a historical truth that weighs on you as heavily as the broom in your hands. Women spend their days cooking, cleaning, spinning, weaving, and tending to children. Their work, the invisible backbone of society, yet rarely acknowledged. A peculiar detail you've noticed is that many women tie small bells to their aprons. The faint jingle, a way to keep track of each other in the smoky, dimly lit cottages where privacy is non-existent. Historians still debate whether this constant labor contributed more to women's early aging or the high mortality rates from childbirth. But either way, it means your days are a blur of tasks, each one blending into the next with no respite in sight. You finish sweeping and grab a wooden bucket to fetch water. Your mother-in-law's voice trailing after you. "Don't dawdle. We've got laundry to do." You step outside, the morning air cold against your skin, and trudge to the village well, your body protesting with every step. The well is busy this time of day. Other women gathered around, their chatter a mix of complaints and laughter. One of them, a neighbor named Edith, with a face lined from years of toil, nods at you. "How's the little one?" she asks, her tone warm. "She's well," you reply, managing a small smile. Though you're too tired to feel much joy, Edith chuckles. "You'll be chasing her around soon enough. Just wait." You laugh softly, though the thought of more work makes your heart sink. If you're already this exhausted, how will you manage when your daughter starts toddling? You fill your bucket, the icy water splashing onto your hands, and haul it back to the house, your arms trembling under the weight. Back inside, your mother-in-law has a pile of soiled linens, waiting, the fabric stiff with dirt and sweat from the mill. You set up a wooden tub, pouring the water in, and add a handful of lye soap, the harsh smell stinging your nose. You kneel beside the tub, scrubbing the linens against a washboard, your hands turning red and raw from the soap and cold water. The work is grueling, your back aching as you lean over, but you keep going, knowing there's no one else to do it. Your mother-in-law joins you, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "You'll get faster," she says, though her tone lacks warmth. Every woman does. The laundry takes hours. Your hands blistered by the time you're done, and you hang the wet linens on a line outside, the damp fabric heavy in your arms. The sun is higher now, its weak warmth doing little to dry the clothes. But you leave them, hoping for a breeze. Back inside, your daughter wakes, her cries sharp and demanding, and you hurry to her, picking her up and rocking her gently. She's hungry again, and you sit by the hearth to nurse. The fire's heat, a small comfort against the chill of the room. Your mother-in-law watches you, her expression softening slightly. "She's a strong one," she says. "She'll need to be. Growing up here." You nod, though the words feel like a warning, a reminder of the harsh life your daughter will face. The same life you're living now. With your daughter settled, you move on to the next task, spinning wool into thread, a job you've done since you were a child, helping your sister back in your parents' cottage. You sit by the window, the spindle in your hand, the raw wool greasy between your fingers as you twist it into thread. The rhythmic motion is almost soothing, though your arms ache from the earlier chores. And the wool smell, a mix of sheep and earth, clings to your skin. Your mother-in-law is cooking now, stirring a pot of pottage, a watery stew of barley and whatever vegetables she could scrounge. A carrot, an onion, maybe a handful of wilted greens. The smell is faint, the meal as bland as your breakfast, but it's what keeps you alive. A far cry from the hearty meals you dream of from your modern life. Thomas returns for a midday meal, his face streaked with flour from the mill, and you set the table, placing clay bowls and wooden spoons in front of him and your mother-in-law. He smiles at you, a tired but genuine smile. "How are you feeling?" he asks, his voice soft. "Tired, you admit," and he nods. "It'll get easier," he says, though you're not sure if he's talking about your recovery or the endless work. You ladle out the pottage, the thin broth barely filling the bowls, and sit to eat, your daughter cradled in one arm. The meal is tasteless, the barley chewy, but you force it down, knowing you need the strength to keep going. Thomas reaches over, touching your daughter's tiny hand. "She's growing already," he says, and you manage a small smile, though the fear of losing her to illness or accident lingers in your mind. After the meal, you clear the table, washing the bowls in a basin of cold water, your hands stinging from the soap. Your mother-in-law hands you a basket. "Go gather herbs," she says. "We need more for the pottage." You nod, wrapping your daughter in a sling across your chest, and head out, the basket swinging from your arm. The village is bustling now, women moving between cottages, carrying firewood, laundry, or children, their faces etched with the same exhaustion you feel. You walk to a small patch of land near the forest, where wild herbs grow, and kneel to pick them, your daughter's weight pulling at your shoulders. The herbs are sparse, the ground hard from the cold, but you manage to gather a small handful, their sharp scent, a brief relief from the village's usual smells. On your way back, you pass a group of women at the river, washing more laundry, their laughter echoing over the water. One of them waves at you. "How's the miller's new wife?" she calls, her tone teasing. You wave back, forcing a smile. "Busy," you reply, and they laugh. The sound, a rare moment of lightness in your day. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be meeting friends for coffee, not scrubbing clothes in a freezing river. But here, these brief exchanges are your only social life. A small comfort in an otherwise relentless routine. Back at the house, you hand over the herbs, and your mother-in-law adds them to the pot. The pottage simmering for the evening meal. You sit to spin more wool, your daughter sleeping against your chest, her soft breaths, a quiet rhythm against the crackle of the fire. The day stretches on, each task blending into the next. Cooking, cleaning, spinning, tending to your daughter. An endless cycle that leaves you bone-tired by nightfall. You lie down on your mat, your body aching, and wonder how you'll do this again tomorrow. And the day after that. For the rest of your life, in this medieval world where a woman's work is never done. Part 6. Living under religious scrutiny, you wake to the sound of church bells tolling in the distance. Their deep, resonant clang pulling you from a dreamless sleep. It's early morning. The air in the miller's cottage, cold and heavy, with the scent of wood smoke. You're still on the straw mat, your daughter nestled beside you, her tiny breaths soft against your arm. The exhaustion from yesterday's endless chores lingers in your bones. But the bells remind you it's Sunday, a day of rest. Or so you'd think in the modern world. Here in 5th century Europe, Sundays mean church, a time for prayer, but also a time for scrutiny, especially for women like you. You sit up slowly, your body stiff, and glance at your mother-in-law, who's already dressing in her best tunic. A faded grey one she saves for services. "Hurry up," she says, her tone sharp. "We can't be late." "Not today." You nod, though you'd give anything to stay in bed. Your daughter's warmth, a small comfort against the chill. You wrap your daughter in a cloth sling, tying her securely against your chest, and pull on your own tunic. The rough wool scratching your skin. Thomas is up too, his face still dusted with flour from yesterday's work at the mill, and he gives you a tired smile as you step outside together. The village is alive with movement. Families, trudging toward the small stone church at the center of the settlement. Their faces a mix of duty and resignation. The air is crisp, the ground slick with dew, and you watch your step, your shoes already worn thin from daily toil. The church looms ahead, its sagging roof and weathered walls, a far cry from the grand cathedrals you've seen in history books. But to the villagers, it's the heart of their world, a place of salvation and judgment. Inside, the church is dim, lit only by a few tallow candles that flicker weakly on the altar. The air smells of damp stone and the faint musk of unwashed bodies, a reminder of how rare bathing is here. Thanks to those medieval beliefs about water carrying illness, you find a spot near the back, standing with Thomas and your mother-in-law. your daughter stirring slightly against you. The priest, a gaunt man with a stern face, begins the service in Latin, his voice droning as he recites prayers. You don't understand, but the message behind his words is clear. Women are to be obedient, chaste, and humble, daughters of Eve, forever tainted by her sin. A historical truth you've come to learn is that the medieval church sees women as morally weaker, their role to serve men and God, their every action policed by religious doctrine. A peculiar detail you've heard whispered among the women is that some priests encourage wives to confess if they've tempted their husbands with immodest behavior, like leaving their hair uncovered. A confession that can lead to public shaming. Historians still debate whether this strict control over women's behavior was more about maintaining social order or genuine religious belief. But either way, it means you live under constant scrutiny. The priest's sermon today is particularly pointed, his eyes scanning the congregation as he speaks of the dangers of witchcraft. The devil seeks out the weak, he warns, and women, with their frail natures, are his easiest prey. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the cold. Your arms tightening around your daughter. Instinctively, you've heard stories of women accused of witchcraft, their herbal remedies or sharp tongues twisted into evidence of devilry. Just last month, a widow in a neighboring village was dragged to trial after a cow died. Her knowledge of healing plants branded as sorcery. The priest's words linger in the air, a warning to every woman here to stay in line, to be meek, to avoid standing out. You glance at your mother-in-law, her face impassive, but you can tell she's listening closely, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. After the sermon, the congregation shuffles forward for communion, the priest placing a small wafer on each tongue with a muttered blessing. You take your turn, the wafer dry and tasteless in your mouth, and return to your spot. Your daughter now awake and fussing softly. You rock her gently, hoping she doesn't cry, knowing the priest frowns on disruptions, especially from women. As the service ends, the villagers file out, their voices low as they discuss the sermon. You overhear two women whispering nearby. Did you see how he looked at Agnes? One says, her tone nervous. She'd better stop selling those herb pouches, or she'll be next. You know Agnes, the midwife who helped you during your daughter's birth. Her knowledge of plants a lifeline for many, but also a risk in this climate of fear. You think, if this were the modern world, she'd be a respected herbalist, not a potential witch. But here, her skills make her a target. Outside, the sun is higher now, its weak warmth doing little to ease the chill in your bones. Thomas lingers to speak with a few men about the mill, while your mother-in-law joins a group of women. Their chatter, a mix of gossip and piety. You stand off to the side, rocking your daughter, feeling the weight of the priest's words pressing down on you. You've always been careful, keeping your head down, focusing on your chores. But the fear of accusation is a constant shadow. You think of the widow from the neighboring village, her fate unknown, but likely grim, and wonder what it would take to be accused. A failed crop, a sick child, a neighbor's grudge. The possibilities are endless and terrifying. Your thoughts are interrupted by a tug on your sleeve. It's Edith, the neighbor you met at the well, her face lined with concern. You look pale, she says, her voice soft. Are you well? You nod, forcing a smile. Just tired, you reply. Though it's more than that. She pats your arm. Come to the convent with me this afternoon, she says. They're giving out bread for the poor, and you could use the rest. You hesitate, knowing your mother-in-law won't approve of you shirking your chores. But the promise of bread and a moment's peace is too tempting to resist. I'll try, you say, and she nods, her smile warm. Good. You need to take care of yourself. For that little one's sake. You return home with Thomas and your mother-in-law. The walk silent, except for the crunch of leaves underfoot. Back at the cottage, you set your daughter down in her cradle and help prepare the midday meal. A thin pottage of barley and herbs. The same bland fare you've eaten for days. Your mother-in-law watches you closely, her eyes narrowing as you move slower than usual. You're not sick. Are you? She asks. Her tone suspicious. You shake your head. No. Just tired. You say again, hoping she doesn't press further. You think of the priest's sermon, his warnings about women's weakness, and wonder if she's looking for signs of something darker. A thought that makes your stomach churn. After the meal, you mention Edith's invitation to the convent, framing it as a chance to get bread for the family. Your mother-in-law grumbles, but agrees. Don't be long, she says. There's still spinning to do. You nod, relieved, and wrap your daughter in her sling, heading out to meet Edith. The convent is a short walk. A small stone building surrounded by a garden of herbs and vegetables, tended by the nuns who live there. Edith is waiting outside, her basket already half full of bread, and she smiles as you approach. I knew you'd come, she says, her tone teasing. You laugh softly, the sound surprising you. I couldn't resist the bread. You reply, and she chuckles. Smart girl, inside the convent. The air is warm, the scent of baking bread, a stark contrast to the smoky dampness of your cottage. A nun, her face framed by a simple wimple, hands you a small loaf, her eyes kind. For your family, she says, and you thank her, the bread's warmth seeping into your hands. You sit with Edith in the garden, sharing the loaf, its crust crisp and its center soft. A rare treat that makes you sigh with contentment. Your daughter sleeps against you. The convent's quiet, a soothing balm after the tension of the church service. Edith tells you about the nuns, how some women choose this life to escape marriage and the dangers of childbirth. Their days filled with prayer and work, but free from the scrutiny of husbands and priests. You think of your own life, the endless chores, the fear of accusation, and wonder if the convent might be a refuge for you one day. But you know it's a distant dream. You're a wife and mother now, your path set by the expectations of your family and village. Still, for a moment, sitting here with Edith, the bread warm in your hands, you feel a flicker of peace, a rare escape from the religious scrutiny that defines your life in this medieval world. Part 7. Violence and Vulnerability. You leave the convent with Edith, the small loaf of bread tucked securely in your basket. Its warmth a quiet comfort as you walk back through the village. The sun is dipping lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the thatched roofs. But the beauty of the late afternoon does little to ease the unease that's settled in your chest since the church service. Your daughter is still asleep in her sling, her soft weight against you, a reminder of your new role as a mother, but also of the dangers that come with being a woman in this 5th century European village. You part ways with Edith at the edge of the village, her kind smile lingering in your mind as you head back to the miller's cottage. The sound of the mill wheel creaking in the distance. You hope for a quiet evening, but the tension from the priest's sermon about witchcraft still lingers, a dark cloud over your thoughts. As you step into the cottage, the air feels heavier than usual, the smoky warmth of the hearth overshadowed by the sharp tone of your mother-in-law's voice. She's standing by the fire, her arms crossed, her face twisted with irritation. You took too long, she snaps, her eyes narrowing as she looks at you. I told you not to dawdle. You hold up the bread, hoping to soften her mood. I brought this from the convent. You say, your voice quiet, but she barely glances at it. Bread won't spin the wool we need for winter, she retorts, pointing to the pile of raw wool waiting by the window. You nod, setting the bread down and moving to the spinning, your daughter stirring slightly against you as you sit. You're trying to focus on the task, but your mother-in-law's muttering continues. Her complaints a constant drone in the background. Thomas returns from the mill just as the sky darkens outside. His face weary, but calm. At least until he senses the tension in the room. What's wrong, he asks. His voice low, as he sets down a sack of flour by the door. Your mother-in-law doesn't hesitate. She's been lazy, she says, pointing at you. Gone half the day to the convent, leaving me to do everything. You feel a flush of anger, but you bite your tongue, knowing, arguing, will only make things worse. Thomas looks at you, his expression unreadable. Is that true, he asks, and you shake your head. I was only gone an hour. I brought bread for us. He nods. But before he can respond, your mother-in-law cuts in. She needs to learn her place. Thomas, you can't let her slack off like this. The words hang in the air. A challenge. And you see Thomas's jaw tighten, his hands clenching at his sides. You've seen this before. The way men in the village are expected to correct their wives. A practice rooted in the medieval belief that a husband's authority must be upheld, even through violence. A historical truth you've come to dread is that domestic abuse is not only accepted but encouraged. With church doctrine, like the 15th century Liber Extra, stating that a man may chastise his wife and beat her for her own correction. A peculiar detail you've heard whispered among the women is that some husbands use a small stick, called a switch of correction, to beat their wives, without leaving marks that might draw too much attention. Historians still debate whether this violence was more about control or genuine belief in women's inferiority. But either way, it means you live in constant fear of crossing an invisible line. Thomas steps closer, his voice low. You need to work harder, he says, his tone firm but not cruel. At least not yet. You nod quickly, your hands moving faster on the spindle, the wool slipping through your fingers as you try to show your diligence, but your mother-in-law isn't satisfied. She needs to feel it. Thomas. She presses, her voice cold, or she'll never learn. You freeze, your heart pounding, and before you can react, Thomas grabs your arm, pulling you to your feet. I don't want to do this, he mutters, but his grip tightens, and you feel a sharp sting as his hand connects with your cheek. The sound echoing in the small room, your daughter wakes, her cries piercing the air, and you stumble back, your hand flying to your face, tears stinging your eyes. The pain isn't just physical, it's the humiliation, the betrayal that cuts deepest. You thought Thomas was different. His kindness during your daughter's birth, a flicker of hope. But now you see the pressure he's under, the expectation to dominate, to control. You sink back to the floor, rocking your daughter to soothe her cries, your cheek throbbing as you try to hold back your own sobs. Thomas looks away, his shoulders slumped. Don't make me do that again, he says, his voice hollow, and you nod, too afraid to speak. Your mother-in-law watches, her expression unreadable, but you can feel her satisfaction, her belief that this is how a wife should be kept in line. The evening passes in a tense silence, you spinning wool until your fingers ache, your daughter finally asleep in her cradle. Thomas sits by the hearth, staring into the fire, while your mother-in-law prepares a thin pottage for supper, the same watery stew you've eaten for days. You eat in silence, the food tasteless in your mouth, your mind racing with fear and anger. You think of the modern world, where domestic violence is a crime, where you'd have resources, a hotline to call, a shelter to flee to. Here, you have nothing, no recourse, no protection. If you complain to the priest, he'd likely tell you to be a better wife, to submit more fully to your husband's authority. You're trapped, your body and your spirit, at the mercy of those around you. As night falls, you lie on your mat, your daughter beside you, her soft breaths, a small comfort in the darkness. But sleep doesn't come easily. The sting of Thomas's hand still fresh. The fear of what might come next, keeping you awake. You think of other women in the village, the bruises they hide under their tunics, the quiet shame in their eyes. You've heard stories of worse, of husbands who beat their wives so badly they can't work for days, of women who die from their injuries, their deaths dismissed as accidents. You wonder how many more times Thomas will raise his hand, how much you'll have to endure before you break. The next morning, you wake to the same routine, feeding your daughter, helping with chores. But there's a new wariness in your movements, a constant awareness of Thomas and your mother-in-law. You keep your head down, working harder than ever, hoping to avoid another outburst. But the fear doesn't fade. It's a constant companion, a shadow that follows you through every task. You fetch water, scrub laundry, spin wool. Each chore a reminder of your vulnerability, your lack of control. You think of Edith, her kind offer of bread at the convent, and wonder if she's faced the same violence, if she has scars you can't see. You want to ask her, to find some solidarity, but you're too afraid to speak of it. The shame too deep. By midday, you're at the river, washing more linens, the cold water numbing your hands as you scrub. A few other women are there, their chatter quieter than usual, and you notice one of them, a young wife named Marjorie, has a bruise on her arm, the shape of fingers clear against her pale skin. She catches you looking and pulls her sleeve down, her eyes darting away, and you feel a pang of guilt for staring. It's nothing, she mutters, her voice barely audible, and you nod, understanding all too well. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd both have support, a way out. But here, you're both trapped, your bodies belonging to your husbands, your pain, a private burden. The day drags on, each task a reminder of your place, your vulnerability. You cook, clean, tend to your daughter, all while keeping one eye on Thomas, watching for any sign of anger. He's quieter today, almost gentle, helping you carry a heavy pot of water without being asked. But you can't trust it. Not after last night. You wonder if this is how it will be. Moments of kindness overshadowed by the threat of violence. A cycle you can't escape. As night falls, you lie down, your daughter in your arms, and pray for strength, for safety, for a life where you're not so utterly at the mercy of those around you. Part 8. The Power of Nuns. You wake to the soft cooing of your daughter, her tiny hand brushing against your cheek as she stirs beside you on the straw mat. It's been a restless night. The sting of Thomas's hand from a few days ago still lingering in your memory. Though the bruise on your cheek has faded to a dull ache, the miller's cottage is quiet this morning, the usual creak of the mill wheel absent. A rare day, when Thomas and his father are away delivering flour to a nearby manor. Your mother-in-law is still asleep, her snores a low rumble from the other side of the room. giving you a moment of peace to gather your thoughts. You sit up slowly, the cold dirt floor chilling your bare feet, and wrap your daughter in her cloth sling, tying her securely against your chest. Today, you decide. You need to escape the suffocating tension of this house, even if just for a few hours. You remember Edith's words about the convent, how some women find refuge there, a life free from the violence and scrutiny you've come to fear. The idea has been nagging at you since that day at the church. The priest's warnings about witchcraft still echoing in your mind. You need to see it for yourself, to understand if such a life could ever be an option for you, though you know it's a distant dream with a husband and child tying you to this village. You dress quickly, pulling on your worn tunic, and slip out of the cottage before your mother-in-law wakes. The loaf of bread, from your last visit to the convent, long gone but its memory, a small comfort. The morning air is crisp. The village still waking as you make your way to the convent. Your daughter's soft weight against you, a grounding presence. The convent comes into view, its stone walls sturdy and unadorned, surrounded by a small garden where herbs and vegetables grow in neat rows. You spot a few nuns working there, their grey habits blending with the morning mist as they tend to the plants with quiet focus. You hesitate at the gate, feeling out of place. But one of the nuns notices you and waves you over, her face kind beneath her wimple. "Come in, child," she says, her voice warm. "You look like you could use some rest." You nod, grateful, and step inside. The scent of rosemary and freshly turned earth, a stark contrast to the smoky dampness of your cottage. The nun introduces herself as Sister Beatrice, her hands rough from work, but gentle, as she guides you to a wooden bench in the garden. You sit, your daughter stirring slightly as you adjust her in the sling, and Sister Beatrice brings you a cup of weak herbal tea, its warmth seeping into your hands as you sip. "You're the miller's new wife, aren't you?" she asks. Herr Turner, gentle. And you nod. "Yes. I've been here a few months." She smiles, her eyes crinkling. "I've seen many young wives come through here, seeking a moment's peace." You feel a lump in your throat at her words, the kindness in her voice, a balm to the fear you've been carrying. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd have a therapist to talk to, not a nun in a medieval garden. But here, this small act of compassion feels like a lifeline. As you sip the tea, another nun approaches, her presence commanding, despite her simple habit. She's older, her face lined with wisdom, and Sister Beatrice introduces her as Abbess Hildegard, a name you've heard whispered in the village with a mix of awe and reverence. Hildegard of Bingen, though this is an earlier version of her legacy in the 5th century. Her influence already growing among the religious women of Europe. A historical truth you recall is that Hildegard, who will later become a renowned 12th century abbess, is a polymath. Her contributions to theology, music, and medicine shaping medieval thought. A rare example of a woman wielding intellectual power. A peculiar detail you've heard is that she claims to receive divine visions from a young age, which she'll later document in her writings. A fact that makes her both respected and feared. Historians still debate whether her visions were genuine spiritual experiences or a strategic way to gain authority in a male-dominated church. But either way, her presence here is a beacon of what women can achieve. Even in this oppressive time, Hildegard sits beside you, her gaze sharp but kind. "You look troubled," she says, her voice low. "What brings you here?" You hesitate, the bruise on your cheek hidden, but the memory fresh. And finally whisper, "I'm afraid. At home, it's not safe." Her expression softens, and she nods. "Many women come here for the same reason. she says. The convent offers refuge, but it's not a path for everyone. She tells you of her own journey, how she was given to the church as a child, her family seeing her as a burden, but here she found purpose, her mind free to explore theology, music, and healing. She gestures to the garden. We grow herbs for the sick, she says, and we pray. But we also learn something most women are denied. You listen, captivated by her words. The idea of a life dedicated to learning and prayer, a stark contrast to your own, filled with endless chores and fear. Hildegard shows you a small manuscript she's working on. Its pages filled with careful script and drawings of plants. Their use is noted in the margins. This is for healing, she says, pointing to an illustration of chamomile. It soothes pain, eases fear. You think of Agnes, the village midwife, and her herb pouches, how they've helped you, but also put her at risk of witchcraft accusations. You ask, aren't you afraid of being accused? For knowing so much, Hildegard's eyes darken. We must be careful, she admits. The church fears what it cannot control. But I believe God gave us these gifts to use, not to hide. The morning passes in the convent's quiet rhythm. You helping the nuns harvest herbs. Your daughter asleep in her sling as you work. The repetitive motion of picking leaves is soothing. The scent of thyme and sage filling the air. And for the first time in days, you feel a sense of peace. Sister Beatrice teaches you how to dry the herbs, tying them into small bundles to hang in the convent's kitchen. And you marvel at the knowledge these women hold. Knowledge that could save lives, but also endanger them. You think, if this were the modern world, Hildegard would be a celebrated scientist, not a nun hiding her work from prying eyes. But here, her power is a fragile thing, balanced on the edge of the church's approval. As noon approaches, Hildegard invites you to join the nuns for their midday meal. A simple spread of bread, cheese, and a thin vegetable broth. But it's more filling than the watery pottage you're used to at home. You sit at a long wooden table in the convent's refectory, the room warmed by a small fire. The nuns eating in silence, as one of them reads from a religious text. The words wash over you, their meaning lost in Latin, but the rhythm of the reading is calming, a stark contrast to the tension of your cottage. You eat slowly, savouring the bread's crusty texture, the cheese's sharp tang, and feel a flicker of gratitude for this moment of respite, though you know it can't last. After the meal, Hildegard takes you aside, her expression serious. If you ever need to leave your home, she says, the convent can take you in, but you must be sure it's a hard life, and you'd leave much behind. You nod, thinking of Thomas, your daughter, the life you've built. However fragile, the idea of escape is tempting, but the cost feels too high. At least for now. You thank her, your voice thick with emotion, and she presses a small bundle of dried chamomile into your hand. For your fears, she says, and you clutch it tightly. A small token of hope in a world that offers so little. You leave the convent as the sun begins to dip, the village coming back into view as you walk home. The chamomile bundle is tucked into your basket, its scent a reminder of the morning's peace. But as you near the cottage, the familiar dread returns. Your mother-in-law is waiting at the door, her arms crossed. Where have you been? She demands. And you hold up the basket. At the convent, I helped with herbs, you say, hoping to appease her. She grumbles but lets you inside, and you set to work on the spinning. Your daughter asleep in her cradle, the convent's quiet fading into memory as the reality of your life closes in once more. Part 9. A Village Weaver's Life. You rise from your straw mat. The faint light of dawn, creeping through the cracks of the miller's cottage. The familiar ache in your body, a constant reminder of your endless duties. Your daughter is still asleep beside you. Her soft breaths, a quiet comfort in the chilly morning air. It's been a few weeks since your visit to the convent, and the small bundle of chamomile Hildegard gave you is tucked safely in your basket. Its scent, a fading echo of that brief moment of peace. Today, though, you have a different task ahead, one that offers a sliver of purpose beyond the usual chores of cooking and cleaning. You've taken up weaving, a skill your mother taught you back in your childhood home, and the village women have started to rely on you for sturdy cloth to mend their families' tunics. You dress quickly, pulling on your worn tunic, and tie your daughter in her sling, ready to head to the small corner of the cottage where your loom waits. Your mother-in-law is already up, stirring a pot of barley porridge over the hearth. Her movements brisk, despite the early hour. She glances at you, her expression less sharp than usual. "You'll be at the loom today," she asks. And you nod. "Yes. I promised Edith a length of cloth for her son's tunic." She grunts in approval. "Good. We can use the extra grain. She'll trade for it." You feel a small spark of pride at her words, a rare acknowledgement of your work's value, though you know it's more about the trade than any real appreciation for your skill. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be selling your woven pieces on Etsy, maybe sipping coffee while you worked, not bartering for scraps of grain in a smoky cottage. You settle at the loom, a simple wooden frame Thomas helped you build last month. Its rough edges worn smooth from use. The warp threads are already set. A mix of coarse wool you spun yourself and some flax you traded for at the market. Their beige and grey tones blending into a sturdy fabric. You start weaving, the shuttle moving back and forth with a rhythmic clack. The motion soothing despite the ache in your shoulders from holding your daughter in her sling. She's awake now, her big eyes watching your hands move, her tiny fingers reaching out as if to help. You smile softly. "Not yet, little one," you murmur, kissing her forehead, though you know she'll be learning these skills soon enough. Just as you did at her age, in medieval Europe, weaving is a vital skill for women, a historical truth that shapes your days as much as cooking or childcare. Most families rely on homemade cloth for clothing, bedding, and even sacks to store grain, with women spending hours at their looms to keep their households clothed. A peculiar detail you've learned from the older women in the village is that some weavers add a single thread of a different color, often red, into their cloth as a protection thread, believed to ward off evil spirits, though you suspect it's more a tradition than a real defense. Historians still debate whether this practice was purely symbolic or if it held deeper spiritual meaning for medieval communities. But either way, you've started adding a red thread to your own work. Just to be safe, the morning passes in a steady rhythm, the clack of the loom blending with the crackle of the fire and the occasional cluck of chickens outside. Your mother-in-law finishes the porridge and sets out bowls for breakfast, the thin gruel as bland as ever. But you eat quickly, eager to get back to your weaving. Thomas returns briefly from the mill, his face dusted with flour, and he pauses to watch you work. "That's coming along well," he says, his tone softer than it's been since that awful night a few weeks ago. You nod, grateful for the small kindness, though the memory of his hand on your cheek still makes you wary. "It'll be ready for Edith by noon," you reply, and he smiles. "Good. We'll need that grain for winter." You think, if this were the modern world, a compliment on your work might feel more genuine, not tied to survival. But here, every kind word comes with a practical edge. By midday, you've finished the length of cloth, a sturdy piece about 2 yards long, perfect for a child's tunic. You cut it from the loom, folding it carefully, and wrap your daughter more securely in her sling. Ready to walk to Edith's cottage, your mother-in-law hands you a small basket. Take this cheese to trade too, she says. See if she has any eggs. You nod, tucking the cheese beside the cloth, and step outside. The autumn air crisp against your skin. The village is bustling now. Women moving between cottages, their arms full of firewood or laundry, their voices a low hum of chatter. You spot a group of children playing near the well, chasing a leather ball, and for a moment, you imagine your daughter among them one day, though you know her childhood will be as short as yours was. Edith's cottage is on the far side of the village, a small thatched home much like your own, its walls patched with fresh mud to keep out the winter drafts. She greets you at the door, her face lighting up. You've finished the cloth already, she says, her tone warm, and you nod, handing it over. Just as I promised. She unfolds it, running her hands over the fabric. It's perfect, she says. My boy's tunic is falling apart. This'll keep him warm. She invites you inside. Her cottage, smoky but cozy. A small fire burning in the hearth. Her own daughter, a girl of about 4, is spinning wool by the window. Her small hands clumsy but determined. And you feel a pang of recognition, remembering your own childhood at your mother's side. Edith trades you a small sack of grain and a half-dozen eggs for the cloth and cheese. A fair exchange that'll help your family through the week. She offers you a cup of weak ale, arare trit, and you sit by the fire, sipping slowly as your daughter plays with a wooden toy. Edith hands her. The ale is bitter, but it warms your throat, and for a moment, you feel a rare sense of camaraderie. 2 women sharing a quiet break in their endless toil. Edith tells you about the village gossip, a new family moving in, a cow that went dry, and then her voice lowers. You heard about Marjorie, didn't you? She asks, and you nod, the memory of her bruised arm at the river still fresh. Her husband's been worse since the priest's sermon. Edith whispers, says she's tempting him with her laziness. You think, if this were the modern world, Marjorie could leave, find safety. But here, she's trapped, just like you. The afternoon stretches on, and you help Edith with her spinning. The 2 of you working side by side as your daughters play nearby. The rhythmic motion of the spindle is familiar, a shared language between you, and you find comfort in the quiet companionship. Edith tells you stories as you work, old tales of brave women and cunning fairies, passed down from her mother, and you listen, captivated, adding your own memories of your mother's stories. These moments of storytelling are a small joy, a way to connect with other women, to keep traditions alive, despite the hardships of your life. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be sharing these stories on a podcast, not whispering them over a spindle. But here, they're a lifeline, a thread of hope in a dark world. As the sun begins to dip, you gather your things. The sack of grain and eggs, a welcome weight in your basket. Edith hugs you goodbye, her embrace warm. Come back soon, she says. We'll weave together again. You nod, promising to return, and head back to the miller's cottage, the village growing quiet as evening falls. Your mother-in-law inspects the trade, nodding in approval. Good work, she says, and you feel a flicker of pride, though you know the grain will barely last a week. You settle back at your loom, starting a new piece of cloth. Could the rhythmic clack, a steady heartbeat in the smoky room. Your daughter sleeps in her cradle. The fire, casting a warm glow over her face. And for a moment, you feel a quiet strength. The resilience of a village weaver finding small joys in a life of endless labor. Part 10. The Black Death and Caregiving. You're at your loom. The familiar clack of the shuttle, a steady rhythm as you weave another length of cloth in the miller's cottage. It's been a few years since your daughter's birth, and she's now a lively 3-year-old. Playing nearby with a wooden toy horse Thomas carved for her last winter. The year is 1348. And though you've settled into the grueling routine of medieval life, a dark shadow has begun to creep across Europe. Whispers of a deadly plague have reached your village, carried by travelers and merchants. Tales of entire towns wiped out by a sickness that spares no one. You try to push the rumors aside, focusing on your weaving, but the fear lingers. A cold knot in your stomach as you glance at your daughter. Her laughter, a fragile light in the smoky room. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be checking news updates on your phone, maybe stockpiling masks. But here, you're at the mercy of fate, with no way to prepare for what's coming. Your mother-in-law interrupts your thoughts, her voice sharp as she stirs a pot of pottage over the hearth. "We need more firewood," she says. "And check on Thomas. He's been coughing all morning." You nod, setting down your shuttle and standing, your back aching from hours at the loom. You wrap your daughter in a shawl, tying her to your back with a strip of cloth, and head outside to the woodpile. The autumn air biting at your skin. Thomas is at the mill, his face pale as he hauls a sack of flour, and you notice the rasp in his breath, a dry cough that makes your heart sink. "You should rest," you say, your voice quiet. But he shakes his head. "We can't afford to stop," he replies, though his eyes betray his exhaustion. You don't press him, knowing the mill's output is the only thing keeping your family fed. But the fear of sickness tightens its grip on you. The Black Death has arrived in Europe, a historical truth that you can't ignore as the weeks pass and the rumors become reality. By late 1348, the plague, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis and spread by fleas on rats, has killed up to 60% of Europe's population. Entire villages decimated in its wake. A peculiar detail you've heard from a traveling merchant is that some people believe the plague is spread by bad air, leading them to carry posies of flowers to ward off the miasma. A practice that gives rise to the nursery rhyme "Ring Around the Rosie." Though its connection to the plague is debated, historians still debate whether the plague's rapid spread was due more to poor sanitation or the lack of understanding about fleas as vectors. But either way, it means your village is a ticking time bomb, with no way to stop the coming devastation. A few days later, the first signs of the plague appear in your village. A neighbor's son falling ill with a high fever and dark swellings under his arms. The telltale buboes of the disease. Panic spreads faster than the sickness itself. Villagers shutting themselves in their cottages, praying to be spared. You and Thomas try to keep working. But when your mother-in-law develops a fever, her body racked with chills, you know there's no escaping it. You tend to her as best you can, boiling water with the last of the chamomile from Hildegard's bundle. Its scent, a faint comfort, as you press a cool cloth to her forehead. She's too weak to protest, her sharp tongue silenced by the fever, and you feel a strange mix of pity and fear as you watch her struggle. Her breath's shallow and labored. Your daughter clings to you, sensing the tension, her small hands tugging at your tunic as you move between your mother-in-law and the hearth, preparing broth to keep her strength up. Thomas falls ill, next, his cough worsening, his body burning with fever, and you're torn between caring for him and protecting your daughter. You tie a scrap of cloth over your face. A feeble attempt at protection, though you know it's likely useless against the plague. The village is eerily quiet now. The usual chatter of women at the well, replaced by the tolling of the church bell, marking each new death. You hear it ring for Edith's family. Her entire household gone in a matter of days. And the grief hits you like a stone. The memory of her laughter at the river, a painful echo in your mind. You take on the role of caregiver, a necessity in a village where the few who survive the initial wave of illness are too weak to fend for themselves. You move between cottages, bringing broth and herbs to those who can still swallow. Your daughter strapped to your back as you work. The air is thick with the stench of death. The bodies piling up faster than the men can bury them, and you try to shield your daughter's eyes from the sight, though you know she'll remember this time. The fear etched into her young mind. You use what little knowledge you have, the herbs you learned about at the convent, boiling yarrow to reduce fevers. Though it's often too late to make a difference, you think, if this were the modern world, you'd have antibiotics, ventilators, a chance to save them. But here, all you have is prayer and hope, both of which feel increasingly hollow. Your mother-in-law dies on the third day, her body too frail to fight the plague, and Thomas follows a day later. His last breath, a ragged whisper as you hold his hand. Tears streaming down your face. You're numb with grief, the weight of their loss crushing. But there's no time to mourn, not with your daughter to protect, and others still depending on you. You wrap their bodies in the cloth you wove last month. The red protection thread, a bitter irony now, and help the few remaining men carry them to the mass grave outside the village. The ground soft with recent digging. The priest, one of the few survivors, mutters a prayer over the pit, his voice hoarse. And you stand there, your daughter clinging to your leg, feeling the emptiness of a world turned upside down. You return to the cottage, its silence oppressive without Thomas's quiet presence or your mother-in-law's sharp commands. You light a fire, the flames a small defiance against the cold, and sit with your daughter, feeding her the last of the broth, her small frame pressed against yours. You're one of the lucky ones, somehow spared by the plague, though you don't feel lucky, not with so many gone. You think of Hildegard, wondering if the convent has been spared, if her knowledge of herbs saved her sisters. But you have no way to know. The road's too dangerous to travel now. You sing to your daughter, a lullaby your mother taught you, your voice cracking with exhaustion, and she falls asleep in your arms. Her warmth a reminder of why you keep going. The days blur together. Your role as caregiver, continuing as the plague's grip on the village slowly loosens. You help a few survivors. A widow with 2 children, a young boy who lost his parents, sharing what little food you have. Your own stores dwindling fast. You scavenge for herbs in the forest, risking the dangers of bandits and wild animals. Your daughter tied to your back as you search. You find a patch of nettles. Their sting, a small price to pay for the soup they'll make, and return home. Your hands blistered, but your basket full. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be in a quarantine zone, with aid workers bringing supplies. But here, survival is on your shoulders alone, a burden you bear for your daughter's sake. By winter, the plague has burned itself out, leaving the village a shadow of what it was. Half the cottages stand empty, their hearths cold, their occupants buried in the mass grave. You've lost so much. Thomas, your mother-in-law, Edith, but you've gained a new strength. Forged in the crucible of caregiving, you sit by the fire, your daughter asleep in your lap, and weave a new piece of cloth, The red thread, a symbol of survival now. A testament to the resilience you've found in the face of unimaginable loss. You know the road ahead will be hard. A widow with a child, in a world ravaged by plague. But you're determined to keep going. For the memory of those you've lost. Part 11. The Fate of the Hunted Witch. You sit by the hearth in your now quiet cottage. The fire casting a warm glow over the sparse room as you mend a tear in your daughter's tunic. It's been a year since the Black Death ravaged your village, leaving you a widow at just 18. Your husband Thomas and mother-in-law, among the countless lost to the plague. Your daughter, now 4, sleeps soundly on the straw mat nearby, her wooden toy horse clutched in her small hand, her breathing a soft rhythm that keeps you grounded. The year is 1349, and though the worst of the plague has passed, a new fear grips the survivors. A wave of paranoia fueled by grief and desperation. Whispers of witchcraft have grown louder, the villagers seeking someone to blame for the devastation, and you feel the weight of their suspicion like a storm cloud gathering overhead. You think, if this were the modern world, people would turn to science to explain the plague. Not superstition. But here, fear drives them to point fingers. And women like you are easy targets. You've taken on more responsibilities since Thomas's death. Not just as a weaver, but as a healer of sorts. Using the knowledge you gained from Hildegard at the convent to help the few who remain. You've been brewing simple remedies. Yarrow tea for fevers. Chamomile for sleeplessness. Sharing them with neighbors who knock on your door in the night. Their faces drawn with worry. But this act of kindness, meant to ease suffering, has put you at risk. Yesterday, you overheard 2 women at the well whispering about you. Their voices low but sharp. She's too young to know so much about herbs. One said, and she survived the plague. Maybe she made a pact with the devil. The words sent a chill down your spine. The memory of the priest's sermon about witchcraft echoing in your mind. His warnings about women's weakness, now a noose tightening around your neck. The fear of being accused as a witch is a stark historical truth in medieval Europe, especially in the wake of the Black Death, when accusations spiked as communities sought scapegoats for their suffering. Between the 14th and 17th centuries, tens of thousands of women were tried and executed for witchcraft, often on flimsy evidence, like owning a cat or knowing herbal remedies. A peculiar detail you've heard whispered among the villagers is that some believe witches can curdle milk with a glance, a superstition that led to a neighbor's recent accusation after her cow stopped producing, though you suspect it was more likely due to the cow's age than any curse. Historians still debate whether these witch hunts were driven more by misogyny or genuine belief in the supernatural. But either way, it means you live in constant danger, your every action scrutinized for signs of devilry. Morning comes. The roosters crow, a harsh reminder of another day to face, and you rise to stoke the fire. Your daughter stirring as the warmth spreads through the cottage. You prepare a thin porridge, the last of your grain stores dwindling, and feed her, her small hands clutching the wooden spoon as she eats. You're about to head to your loom when a loud knock at the door startles you, your heart leaping into your throat. You open it to find the village reeve, a stern man with a scar across his cheek, flanked by 2 other men. Their faces grim. "You're to come with us," he says, his voice cold. The priest wants to question you. Your stomach drops. The whispers at the well, now a reality. And you glance at your daughter, fear clawing at your chest. "What about my child?" you ask, your voice trembling. And he grunts. "She'll stay with Marjorie until we're done." You have no choice but to follow, kissing your daughter's forehead as Marjorie, her face pale with worry, takes her hand. The walk to the church feels endless. the villagers staring as you pass. Their eyes a mix of fear and accusation. Inside, the priest waits, his gaunt face illuminated by the flickering candles on the altar, a heavy book open before him. "You've been accused of witchcraft," he says, his voice low and menacing. "You survived the plague, and your herbs have brought suspicion." You shake your head. "I only wanted to help." You plead, but he cuts you off. "The devil works through good deeds to deceive us." He points to a small mark on your arm, a birthmark you've had since childhood. "This is the devil's mark," it declares, and you feel the blood drain from your face, knowing no amount of reason will save you now. The trial is swift, a mockery of justice, with villagers testifying against you, their grief twisted into blame. One woman claims your yarrow tea made her son sicker, though you know he was already too far gone. Another says she saw you, muttering to yourself in the forest, gathering herbs, which she now calls a spell. You try to defend yourself. "I learned these remedies at the convent," you say, hoping Hildegard's name might lend you credibility. But the priest dismisses it. Even holy places can harbor evil. He snaps, his eyes burning with zeal. You're stripped and searched for more marks, the humiliation burning as they find a small scar from a childhood fall, another supposed sign of your pact with the devil. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd have a lawyer, a fair trial. But here, you're at the mercy of superstition. Your fate sealed by fear. They bind your hands with rough rope, the fibers biting into your wrists, and lead you to a makeshift cell, a damp stone room beneath the church. Its walls slick with moss. You sit on the cold floor, your body trembling, the darkness pressing in as you try to hold on to hope, though it slips through your fingers like water. You think of your daughter, her laughter, her small hand in yours, and pray Marjorie will keep her safe, that she won't grow up hearing her mother was a witch. The hours stretch on, the only sound, the drip of water from the ceiling, each drop a reminder of the life you're losing. You wonder if Hildegard faced such accusations, if her visions protected her. But you have no visions, nor divine shield, just your love for your daughter and a desperate will to survive. The next morning, they come for you, dragging you to the village square, where a crowd has gathered, their faces a mix of fear and anger. The priest stands on a wooden platform, his voice booming as he reads your supposed crimes. Consorting with the devil, cursing crops, bringing the plague upon us. The accusations are baseless, but the crowd roars in agreement, their grief needing a target. And you're the easiest one. They tie you to a stake, the wood piled high around your feet, and you feel a strange calm settle over you. Knowing there's no escape, you look out at the crowd, searching for Marjorie, for your daughter, but they're not there. And you're grateful, not wanting her to see this, to carry this memory. The torch is lit, the flames catching quickly, their heat searing your skin as the fire rises. You close your eyes, the smoke choking your lungs, and think of your daughter's laughter, the clack of your loom, the scent of chamomile from Hildegard's bundle. You whisper a prayer, not for yourself, but for her, that she'll grow up strong, that she'll find a better life than this. The pain is unbearable, but it fades as darkness closes in. Your last thought, a hope that this village will one day see women as more than scapegoats, that your death might mean something, though you know it's a faint hope in this medieval world where fear reigns supreme. Back in the village, Marjorie holds your daughter close, tears streaming down her face as the smell of smoke drifts through the air. She vows to raise her as her own, to tell her stories of your kindness, your weaving, Your love, though she'll never speak of this day, the day the village turned on you, a hunted witch in a time of terror. Your daughter grows up with Marjorie's children, her mother's memory, a warm but distant light. A tale of a woman who tried to heal, who loved fiercely, but paid the ultimate price for a world that couldn't understand her. Part 12. The Life of Isabeau of Bavaria. You find yourself in a new time and place. The rough straw mat of your village cottage, replaced by a plush velvet cushion beneath you. It's 1385. And you're no longer a peasant widow accused of witchcraft. But instead, you're Isabeau of Bavaria, a 15-year-old noblewoman on the cusp of a life-altering moment. You're in a grand chamber in the Palace of Amberg, the air heavy with the scent of beeswax candles and the faint musk of tapestries lining the walls. You're dressed in a silk gown, its deep blue fabric embroidered with gold thread. The weight of it, a constant reminder of your status, and the expectations that come with it. You sit at a small wooden table, a silver mirror reflecting your pale face, your dark hair pinned beneath a jeweled headdress that presses against your temples. You feel the weight of your father's gaze as he stands nearby, his voice low but firm. You'll leave for France tomorrow, he says. King Charles VI awaits his bride. Your heart pounds, a mix of fear and resignation washing over you as you adjust the headdress. Its pearls catching the candlelight. You've known this day was coming since you were a child. Your marriage arranged to seal a political alliance between Bavaria and France. But the reality of leaving your home, your family, for a foreign court feels like a stone in your stomach. You're to marry a man you've never met, a king 16 years your senior, and the thought of being thrust into a world of politics and power, where every move you make will be watched, fills you with dread. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd have a say in your future. Maybe a dating app to find someone you actually liked. But here, your life is a pawn in a larger game. Your feelings irrelevant. In medieval Europe, noble women like you are often married young for political gain. A historical truth that defines your path as Isabeau. Between the 14th and 15th centuries, such marriages were common, with girls as young as 12 wed to secure alliances, their primary role to produce heirs and strengthen ties between kingdoms. A peculiar detail you've heard from your ladies-in-waiting is that some noble brides were given a proxy wedding before travelling, a stand-in groom taking the vows in the king's place. A practice meant to ensure the alliance held, even if the journey proved dangerous. Historians still debate whether these early marriages were more about consolidating power or ensuring peace. But either way, it means you're leaving everything you know for a life of duty. Your worth, measured by your ability to bear sons for the French crown. Your father continues, his tone softening slightly. You'll be queen. Isabeau. A great honor for our family. You nod, forcing a smile, though inside you're trembling. The honor feels more like a cage, gilded but unyielding. Your mother enters, her face lined with worry, and she adjusts your headdress, hair hands gentle. You'll do well, she whispers, but her eyes betray her fear for you. A young girl heading into a lion's den of court intrigue. You clutch her hand for a moment, drawing strength from her touch. Then let go, knowing you must face this alone. A servant announces that your entourage is ready, a retinue of Bavarian nobles and guards to escort you to France. And you rise, smoothing your gown, your heart racing as you prepare to leave your childhood behind. The journey to France takes weeks. The roads rough and the weather unforgiving. Rain soaking through the canvas of your carriage as you travel. You're surrounded by your ladies-in-waiting. Their chatter, a constant hum. But you feel isolated. your thoughts consumed by what awaits you. You pass through villages, their thatched cottages, a stark contrast to the castles you've known. And you see peasant women working in the fields, their hands raw from labor, their faces etched with exhaustion. You feel a pang of envy for their simplicity, though you know their lives are harder than yours in ways you can't imagine. Their struggles, a different kind of cage. You think of your past life as a peasant, the witch trial that ended it, and wonder if Isabeau's wealth and status will protect you now. Or if you're trading one form of vulnerability for another. You arrive in Paris on a grey morning, the city's walls looming as your carriage rattles through the gates. The streets are bustling, merchants shouting their wares, children running alongside your procession, their faces smeared with dirt but bright with curiosity. You're taken to the Louvre, then a royal fortress, its stone walls cold and imposing, and led to a chamber where you'll meet Charles VI for the first time. He enters, a tall man with a gaunt face, his eyes sharp but distant, his crown a heavy weight on his brow. He greets you formally, his voice clipped. "You're younger than I expected," he says, and you curtsy, your voice steady, despite your nerves. "I hope to serve you well, my lord." He nods, but there's no warmth in his gaze, and you realize this marriage will be a contract, not a partnership. You're rolled to bear heirs and smile at his side. The wedding takes place the next day in Notre Dame, the cathedral's soaring arches, a breathtaking backdrop as you walk down the aisle, your gown trailing behind you, the crowd of nobles whispering as you pass. The ceremony is in Latin, the priest's voice echoing through the vast space, and you repeat your vows, your voice barely audible, the weight of the crown placed on your head, a physical reminder of your new role. Charles takes your hand, his grip firm but cold, and you feel the eyes of the court on you, assessing, judging, waiting for you to falter. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd have a prenup, a way out if this doesn't work. But here, you're bound for life. Your every move, a reflection on Bavaria and France. Life at court is a whirlwind of expectations. Your days filled with formal dinners, prayers, and the constant pressure to conceive. Charles is often absent, his mind already showing signs of the instability that will later define his reign, leaving you to navigate the court alone. The nobles are a nest of vipers, their smiles hiding sharp tongues, and you learn quickly to guard your words, your actions, every gesture scrutinized for weakness. You spend hours embroidering with your ladies-in-waiting, their chatter, a mix of gossip and advice. One of them warning you, the king's brother watches you too closely. Air voice low, and you nod, feeling the weight of his gaze at the next feast. His intentions unclear, but unsettling. Your first pregnancy comes quickly. The nausea and exhaustion, a small price to pay for the hope of securing your position, but the child, a girl, dies within days, her tiny body too frail to survive, and you weep alone in your chamber, the court's whispers of your failure echoing in your ears. Charles visits you, his face unreadable. "We'll try again," he says, and you nod, though the grief clings to you like a shadow. You bear more children over the years, 12 in total. Though many don't survive infancy, each loss a knife to your heart. The pressure to produce a healthy son relentless. You think of your peasant life, the fear of childbirth you felt then, and realize that even as a queen, that fear remains. The stakes higher, but the pain the same. You take on more responsibility as Charles's mental health declines. His episodes of madness, leaving the court in chaos. You negotiate with nobles, oversee treaties, and managed the treasury. Your Bavarian upbringing, giving you a sharp mind for politics. Though your foreign status makes you a target for blame when things go wrong, the court calls you extravagant, accusing you of draining the coffers. Though you know it's the wars and Charles's whims that bleed the kingdom dry. You find solace in your surviving children, especially your son Louis, whose laughter reminds you of your own daughter from another life. And you vow to protect them, to give them a better future than the one you've known. Years pass, your role as Queen Mother solidifying as Charles's reign crumbles, and you navigate the shifting alliances of the court with a weary determination. You think of Hildegard, her quiet strength at the convent, and draw on that memory to face each new challenge. Your life as Isabeau, a tapestry of duty, loss, and resilience, woven with the same thread of survival that carried you through your peasant days. Part 13. The importance of storytelling. You're no longer Isabeau of Bavaria, the queen navigating the treacherous French court, but instead, you've returned to a simpler, yet still challenging life in a medieval village in the early 15th century. Around 1410, the grand halls of the Louvre are replaced by the familiar, smoky interior of a peasant cottage. Though this one isn't the miller's home you once shared with Thomas, you're now a widow in a different village, one that survived the Black Death's aftermath. And you've built a new life here, after the horrors of your past. Your daughter, now a bright-eyed girl of 12, sits across from you on a straw mat, her hands busy with a spindle as she spins wool. Her movements more confident than yours were at her age. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, casting a warm glow over the room, the scent of wood smoke mingling with the earthy smell of the barley pottage, simmering in a pot. You're preparing for the village's harvest festival tonight, a rare moment of celebration in a life of toil. And you've been chosen to tell stories, a role you've come to cherish. You adjust the pot over the fire, stirring the pottage with a wooden spoon, the steam warming your face as you think about the tales you'll share. Storytelling is more than entertainment here. It's a lifeline, a way to pass down knowledge, traditions, and hope in a world where written records are rare for peasants like you. A historical truth you've learned through your years in this village is that oral storytelling was a primary means of preserving culture in medieval Europe, with women often serving as the keepers of these tales, weaving them into the fabric of daily life. A peculiar detail you've noticed is that some stories include a truth charm, a phrase like, "as sure as the sun rises," meant to assure listeners of the tale's authenticity, though you suspect it's more about captivating the audience than proving facts. Historians still debate whether these oral traditions were more about maintaining social cohesion or educating the young, but either way, it means your role tonight is a vital one, a thread connecting past and future. Your daughter looks up from her spinning, her eyes bright with excitement. "Will you tell the story of the brave weaver again?" she asks, her voice eager. And you smile, nodding. "Of course. It's one of my favorites. The Brave Weaver is a tale you've crafted from your own life, though you've changed the details to protect her from the darker truths. The witch trial that ended your first life in this medieval world. In your story, the weaver outwits a cruel lord with her cunning, her loom a symbol of resilience, not the tool of survival it was for you during the plague. You've told her this story many times, each telling a chance to remind her of her own strength, to prepare her for the hard life she'll face. As a woman in this village, you finish the pottage and set it aside to cool, then help your daughter with her spinning, guiding her hands as she twists the wool into thread. "You're getting better," you say, and she beams. "I want to be as good as you, Mama," she replies, her words warming your heart. You think of your own mother, how she taught you to spin, to weave, to survive, and feel a pang of gratitude for the skills she gave you, skills that have kept you and your daughter alive through years of hardship. You've taught her everything you know, not just spinning and weaving, but the stories, too, hoping they'll give her courage when she needs it most. You think, if this were the modern world, she'd be in school, learning history from books, not tales by the fire. But here, your voice is her classroom, your stories her lessons. As dusk falls, you and your daughter head to the village square, a small clearing surrounded by thatched cottages, where a bonfire has been lit, its flames dancing against the darkening sky. The villagers gather, their faces weary but hopeful. The harvest festival a chance to forget their troubles for a night. You've brought a basket of apples, a rare treat you traded for at the market, and share them with your neighbors. Their smiles, a small reward for your effort. The air is filled with the scent of roasting meat, a pig donated by the lord of the manor, and the sound of laughter, children running through the crowd, their voices a bright contrast to the usual silence of the village. You settle on a wooden bench near the fire, your daughter at your side, and wait for your turn to speak. The warmth of the flames, a comfort against the autumn chill. The village elder, a stooped man with a grey beard, begins the night with a prayer of thanks for the harvest, his voice carrying over the crackle of the fire. Then, the storytelling begins, each teller adding their own thread to the tapestry of the night. An older woman tells a tale of a fox and a crow, a lesson in cunning, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the story. A young man shares a ghost story, his dramatic pauses earning gasps from the children, though you notice their mothers pull them closer. The fear of spirits all too real in this world. You think of your own ghost, the memory of the witch trial, the flames that ended that life, and wonder if you'll ever be free of it. Though you've learned to weave it into your stories, turning pain into power. When it's your turn, you stand, your daughter's hand in yours, and the crowd quiets, their eyes on you. Eager for your tale, you take a deep breath, your voice steady, despite the flutter in your chest. This is the story of the brave weaver. As sure as the sun rises, you begin. The truth charm earning a few nods from the older villagers. You tell of a woman who wove cloth so fine it caught the eye of a cruel lord, who demanded she weave a cloak to make him invisible, or he'd take her child. The weaver, clever and brave, wove the cloak, but told the lord it would only work if he wore it at midnight in the forest. Knowing wolves roamed there, the lord, greedy for power, ventured out and never returned. And the weaver and her child lived free ever after. The crowd cheers at the ending, your daughter squeezing your hand, her eyes shining with pride, and you feel a surge of warmth, knowing you've given them a moment of joy, of hope. You sit back down, your daughter leaning against you, and the night continues. More stories, songs, and dances filling the square. You watch the villagers, their faces softened by the firelight, and realize how vital these gatherings are. A chance to connect, to remember, to dream. You think of Hildegard, her manuscripts at the convent, and Isabeau, her political maneuvering, and see how your stories, though simpler, are just as powerful. A way to resist the darkness of this world, to keep your daughter's spirit bright. You share another tale, a lighter one, about a talking goat who outwits a farmer, earning laughter from the crowd. The sound, a rare gift in a life of hardship. As the fire dies down, the villagers drift back to their cottages, their voices fading into the night. You and your daughter walk home, her small hand in yours, the stars above a quiet witness to your journey. You tuck her into her mat, kissing her forehead. Did you like the stories, you ask? And she nods. I want to tell them one day, she says, her voice sleepy. And you smile. You will, my love. You reply, knowing you've given her a legacy, a voice to carry forward. You lie down beside her. The cottage quiet, the fire's embers glowing softly, and feel a deep gratitude for the power of storytelling, a thread that binds you to this village, to your daughter, to the women who came before you, a light in the medieval darkness. Part 14. The Resistance of Christine de Pizan. You wake to the sound of quills scratching on parchment, a soft, rhythmic sound that pulls you from sleep. It's 1399. And you're no longer the peasant storyteller of a small village, but instead, you're Christine de Pizan, a 35-year-old widow living in Paris, a city buzzing with the energy of merchants, on the scholars, and nobles. You're in your modest study, a small room in your home, its walls lined with shelves of manuscripts, the air heavy with the scent of ink and vellum. You sit at a wooden desk, a candle flickering beside you, its warm light illuminating the pages of your latest work, the Book of the City of Ladies, a text that's become your rebellion against the misogyny of your time. You rub your eyes, the late hour evident in the ache of your shoulders, and glance at your 3 children, sleeping in the corner of the room, their soft breaths a reminder of why you fight so hard. For them, for all women, you dip your quill in the ink pot, the black liquid glistening as you continue writing. Your words a defense of women's worth, a direct challenge to the male scholars who claim your sex is weak, sinful, and inferior. You're crafting a story within your book, a tale of a virtuous woman who outwits a cruel king, her wisdom saving her people, a narrative meant to counter the endless slander you've read in texts like The Romance of the Rose, which paints women as deceitful and lustful. You think of your past lives, the peasant weaver burned as a witch, the village storyteller passing down tales of resilience, and even Isabeau of Bavaria, navigating the treacherous French court, and you draw on their strength, their pain, to fuel your words. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be blogging or tweeting your feminist arguments, maybe hosting a podcast. But here, your quill is your weapon, your manuscript, your battlefield. Christine de Pizan's life as a writer is a historical truth that marks you as a pioneer. The first woman in Europe to earn a living through her pen. Born in Venice in 1364 and raised in the French court, you were widowed at 25, left to support your children alone, and turned to writing to survive, producing poetry, biographies, and feminist treatises that challenge the misogyny of your era. A peculiar detail you've incorporated into your work is the medieval belief that women's tears were a sign of weakness, which you counter in your book by arguing that tears are a natural response to injustice, a strength, not a flaw, a perspective that feels radical even to you. Historians still debate whether your writings influenced the early stirrings of feminism or were a lone voice in a patriarchal wilderness. But either way, it means you're carving a path for women's voices, a legacy that will echo far beyond your time. You pose, your quill hovering over the page, as a memory surfaces. A conversation with a noblewoman at court last month, her voice bitter as she complained of her husband's cruelty, his belief in women's inferiority justifying his violence. You think of your own husband, a kind man before his death, but also of the violence you endured as a peasant, the slap from Thomas that left a bruise on your cheek, and the witch trial that ended that life in flames. You write with renewed fervor, Your words, a shield for that noble woman, for your past selves, for your daughter sleeping nearby, who you hope will grow up in a world that values her mind, not just her body. You argue that women have built cities, invented arts, ruled kingdoms, their contributions erased by men who fear their power, a truth you feel in your bones. The candle burns low, its wax dripping onto the desk, and you set your quill down, flexing your cramped hand as you read over your work. You're proud of this book. Its pages, a city of women, a refuge where their virtues are celebrated, their voices heard. You think of Hildegard, her manuscripts at the convent, and how her visions gave her authority. And you use a similar strategy, framing your book as a vision granted by three allegorical ladies: reason, rectitude, and justice. A literary device that gives your arguments divine weight in a world that trusts such signs. You smile wryly, knowing it's a clever trick, but one that might protect you from accusations of heresy, a danger you've seen destroy others. Like the peasant weaver you once were, morning light filters through the small window, and your children stir, your son rubbing his eyes as he sits up. "Did you write all night again?" "Mama," he asks, his voice groggy, and you nod, smiling. "I had to finish a story." You reply, ruffling his hair. You rise to prepare breakfast, a simple meal of bread and cheese. The children, helping as you slice the loaf, their chatter filling the room with warmth. You think of your father, a scholar at the French court who taught you to read and write, a rare gift for a girl, and feel grateful for the education that's allowed you to become more than a widow begging for scraps. You think, if this were the modern world, you'd be sending your kids to school, maybe working on a PhD. But here, your study is your university. Your children, your motivation. After breakfast, you return to your desk, the children playing quietly as you continue your work. Now, writing a letter to a patron, a noblewoman who's commissioned a poem for her daughter's wedding. You craft verses celebrating the bride's wisdom and grace, weaving in subtle arguments for women's education, a cause you've championed since you began writing. You know this patron will appreciate your words. Her own daughter, a reader of your earlier works, and you feel a flicker of hope that your ideas are spreading. Even if slowly, you think of the village storyteller you once were, her tales by the fire, and see how your writing is a continuation of that tradition, a way to preserve women's stories, to resist the erasure of their lives. By midday, a messenger arrives, bringing news of a debate at the University of Paris, where scholars have attacked your work, calling it unnatural for a woman to write on such matters. You feel a surge of anger, but also determination, and draft a response, your quill flying across the page as you defend your right to speak. Your arguments sharp and unyielding. You cite examples of women's contributions, from the Amazons to the Virgin Mary, and challenge the scholars to prove their claims of female inferiority. Knowing they can't, you think of Isabeau, her political maneuvering at court, and draw on her resilience, refusing to let these men silence you. Your voice, a beacon in a world that seeks to dim women's light. The day stretches on, your work interrupted by household tasks, mending a tunic, fetching water, teaching your daughter to read a simple prayer. Each task reminds you of your past lives, the endless labor of a peasant, the political dance of a queen, and you weave those experiences into your writing. Your words a tapestry of resistance. You think of the chamomile bundle from Hildegard, its scent, a memory of peace, and wish for that calm now, though you know your fight is far from over. As night falls, You light another candle. Your children asleep. And continue writing. Your quill, a quiet rebellion. Your book, a city where women stand tall. A legacy for the daughters of this medieval world. A hope for a future where their voices will not be silenced. Part 15. Legacy and Light for the Future. You're back in the small village of your storytelling days. Though time has moved forward, and it's now 1420, you're an older woman now. Your hair streaked with grey. Your hands weathered from years of weaving and toil. You sit by the hearth in your modest cottage. The fire casting a warm glow over the room. The crackle of the flames, a familiar comfort. Your daughter, now a grown woman of 22, sits beside you. Her own daughter, your granddaughter, playing at her feet with a wooden doll you carved last winter. The years have been kind in some ways, harsh in others. You've survived famine, another wave of plague, and the ever-present scrutiny of village life. But you've also found joy in your family, in the stories you've passed down, in the quiet resilience that has carried you through. Tonight, you're reflecting on your long journey, the lives you've lived, the women you've been, and the legacy you've woven through time. Your daughter adjusts the pot of pottage simmering over the fire, her movements steady and practiced, a mirror of your own at her age. She's taken up weaving, just as you did. Her cloth traded at the market for grain and eggs. Her skill, a lifeline for her small family. She glances at you, her eyes warm. Will you tell a story tonight? Mama, she asks. And you nod, a smile tugging at your lips. One last one. For you and her. To you reply, nodding at your granddaughter, who looks up at the mention of a story, her eyes bright with curiosity. You think of all the women you've been. The peasant weaver burned as a witch. The village storyteller, Isabeau of Bavaria, Christine de Pizan, and feel their strength in you now. Their voices woven into the tale you'll share. A final thread in the tapestry of your lives. In medieval Europe, women's legacies were often erased. A historical truth you've lived through in each of your incarnations. Their contributions to family, community, and culture overshadowed by men's deeds. Yet, through storytelling, weaving, and acts of quiet resistance, women like you left their mark. Their influence felt in the resilience of their daughters and granddaughters. A peculiar detail you've noticed in your village is that women often name their looms, a small act of ownership in a world that denies them much. Your own loom called Hope, after the chamomile thread Hildegard gave you so long ago. A name that's carried you through decades of hardship. Historians still debate whether these small acts of agency by medieval women laid the groundwork for later feminist thought. But for you, they've been a lifeline, a way to claim your place in a world that seeks to diminish you. You begin your story, your voice soft but steady. This is the tale of a woman who lived many lives. As sure as the sun rises, you say, the truth charm a nod to tradition. You tell of a peasant who wove cloth to survive. Her loom, a shield against despair. A queen who ruled with wisdom, despite her fears. A writer who fought with her quill. And a storyteller who kept hope alive by the fire. Each woman faced darkness, loss, violence, and erasure. But they endured. Their strength passed down like a red thread in their cloth. A thread of protection for those who came after. Your granddaughter listens, her small hand resting on your knee, and your daughter smiles, her eyes glistening, knowing this story is yours. A legacy of love and survival. You pose, your gaze drifting to the fire, its flames a mirror of the trials you faced. The witch's pyre, the court intrigues, the endless labour of peasant life. You think of Hildegard, her manuscripts, a quiet rebellion, of Isabeau, her political manoeuvring a survival tactic, of Christine, her words, a city of women, and feel their spirits in you, their light guiding you through the darkness. You've carried their lessons, their pain, their hope, and now you pass them to your daughter, your granddaughter, a chain of resilience that stretches across centuries. You think, if this were the modern world, your story might be a book, a documentary, a testament to women's strength. But here, it's a tale by the fire, a whisper of defiance in a world that seeks to silence you. Your story ends with the woman, old and wise, sitting by a fire, just like this one, her granddaughter at her feet. Her legacy, a light that never fades. And so she lived. You conclude. Her strength in every thread, every word, every act of love. Your granddaughter claps. Her laughter, a bright note in the quiet room. And your daughter takes your hand. That was beautiful. Mama, she says, her voice thick with emotion. You squeeze her hand, feeling the weight of your years, the joy of this moment, and know you've done what you could, given what you had, to make their world a little brighter, a little kinder. As the fire burns low, the embers glow soft and warm, casting gentle shadows on the walls of your cottage. You look at your daughter, her face so like your own, and your granddaughter, her future, a fragile hope in this medieval world. Their presence wraps around you like a blanket. Their love, a light that has carried you through every trial, from the witch's pyre to the queen's court, from the writer's desk to this quiet hearth. You feel the spirits of Hildegard, Isabeau, Christine, all the women you've been, their strength a whisper in your bones, their stories, a tapestry that stretches across time. They endured, as you have, their legacy, a candle in the dark, now passed to these two. Your heart, your hope. The room grows quieter, the crackle of the fire fading to a murmur. The night wrapping around you like a gentle hand. You imagine their faces blurring, the cottage walls softening, the centuries folding into a single moment of peace. You whisper, your voice a soothing lull. Rest now, my loves. Carry our light forward. The words linger. A promise. A prayer. As you close your eyes, the warmth of the fire, the love in this room, the last things you feel. Your journey ends here, but their story begins. A new thread in the endless weave of women's resilience. Sleep well, dear listener, wrapped in their courage, their hope, their love. Let their light guide your dreams, a beacon for a world where every woman shines.